Hi, I'm Ray. Welcome back to my channel where I make gentle, cozy vlogs and talk about literature. Today I'm going to be sharing with you some of the books which I would like to read this summer. This is not too much of a strict list as a summer TBR. I was just going through my shelves and thinking about some things which I'm either in the mood for or would really like to get read this summer, or which I feel have been on my shelves for kind of quite a bit too long and I would like to get them read. Summer, I think, is a really special time for readers for various reasons. You might be super lucky, like me, if you're a teacher or a student and you actually have the summer holidays as a rich chunk of time in which you can do a lot more reading than you would be able to do during the rest of the year. Even if you're working full-time, I think the fact that summer is often the time that we go on holiday for a couple of weeks, take some books with us, even just the fact that you have more daylight, which makes you feel like you have more time to read, all of these things add together to make summer a really special and exciting time as a reader. I've kind of split my reading into two main categories based on the two quite different things that I think the summer reading period offers. One group which I have is what I think of as traditional summer reading, i.e. those beach read kind of books, lighter reads, perhaps more plot-driven books, generally things which I feel I'm going to get sucked into, be able to read quite quickly, paperback books which I plan to whiz through and enjoy. This is the kind of book which I think a lot of people initially think about when you refer to summer reading. On the other hand, however, I have this completely oppositional category, which is the kind of chunkers, like those big, heavy, long works of literature that you really want to get round to, but you know you need to invest time and effort and energy. When you're busy at work, you don't have that much time for reading. It's quite hard to choose to pick up one of those sorts of books because you know that it's going to take you like 2 months to get through a single book, and you kind of don't want to have to dedicate that much of your spare time to just one story. But in the summer holidays, you have the time to tackle those sorts of books. So I'm going to start off with these because obviously I have not got as many of this kind of book on my TBR. I'm still aware that even in the summer holidays, it takes a while to get through those thicker books. The first one of these classic big books which I would like to read over summer is The Pickwick Papers by Charles Dickens. This is actually a book that I'm reading kind of as part of Emmy and Carolyn Marie Reed's Dickens versus Tolstoy book club that they are hosting for 4 years. This year is the first year. I'm going to put Carolyn's really beautiful illustration of which books they're reading which month up here. You will notice that this was their book for February-March, I believe, and so obviously I am massively behind with it, but basically, when I was busy with work, I realised this wasn't going to work for me to read it at that point in time. I read Childhood, Boyhood, Youth. That took me like 3 months to read or something. Fortunately for me, I have already read all of the other books which are on here, so I'm not gonna do any rereading. So I don't need to read War and Peace, Oliver Twist or Anna Karenina, which leaves me plenty of time to catch up and read The Pickwick Papers. This is Dickens's first published novel. It tells the story of the various adventures and misadventures of the characters in the Pickwick Club. I think each chapter is a kind of standalone mini-story. It's supposed to be very funny. It's also widely deemed to not be one of his best novels. I'm not sure how much I'm going to enjoy it, but I did listen to the start of it a little while ago and I found it funny. I found it fun just to be in Dickens's language, and so I think I might read this as a kind of background read alongside other stuff, because I do tend to prefer a novel that has like a continuous plot tying the whole thing together rather than episodic works of completely standalone stories. But I don't know, I might really enjoy it and I would like to read it because I love the idea with this Dickens versus Tolstoy book club that over the course of 4 years you read the entire oeuvre. Is that how you say that word? All of the works of both Dickens and Tolstoy, and given that I really love those authors, that's something that I've intended to do at some point in my life anyway, and it's really fun to have a book club as an opportunity to give me that prod that I needed to get on with it. I actually also really associate reading Dickens with summer reading because my mum loves Dickens and she would always take a Dickens on holiday with her, so even though I think Dickens is not most people's stereotypical beach read literature, for me, if I imagine reading a book on a beach, it's like a paperback Dickens novel. That's what my mum was always reading on like every holiday that I ever went on. So yeah, Dickens and summer do kind of go together in my head. That's the first big read that I would like to read. The second is a series. These books are the trilogy, J.R.R. Tolkien's Lord of the Rings. And I'm not quite sure whether to class these as an initial read or a reread because my parents read these to my brother and me at the same time that the films came out, which for me was when I was like late primary school age, so I guess like 9, 10, 11 years old, that kind of age. So I remember them a bit, like I definitely remember the experience of them being read aloud. I'm not sure they were the best read alouds, like it was very long, the many, many months that we were reading The Lord of the Rings for. And I remember that I think we all got a bit bored with them. However, I'm hoping that if I can read them in a more concentrated way, then maybe I will enjoy them more. I am really craving a rewatch of the films. I haven't seen them for years and years and years. I've probably like even forgotten bits of the plot. And so I quite want to read the books before I rewatch the films. These are quite famously the story of young hobbit Bilbo Baggins, who goes on a quest throughout Middle-earth in an attempt to destroy this evil ring and basically all of the forces of evil that go alongside it. It's very much high fantasy, looking at themes of loyalty and friendship and strength, bravery, etc. I've heard such mixed things about these books from various friends and booktubers who have read them, so I feel really inspired to reread these because of Crescent Pages. I will link her channel down below. She is like the queen of Middle-earth, and she always talks about how much she loved reading these books and how the characters' strength and bravery and love and optimism in the face of immense danger and immense challenges just really fueled her through, you know, the daily difficulties of life. On the flip side, I have heard people say that they're really boring, and given that that's kind of my memory of them, that like there's quite a lot of asides, a lot of giving of detail, maybe an unnecessary level of world building that doesn't really contribute that much to either development of plot or character. My best friend read The Fellowship of the Ring recently-ish and said that it was just really frustrating how there's like no women in the whole book at all, and I think the women are like bigged up a bit more for the films because they realised that they had to put some female characters in it, and yeah, I'm pretty sure the books are going to be very lacking on the female front, so I'll see how I find it. Overall, I'm excited. I think I do have quite a good idea of what I'm getting into with these, and I also think that reading them in quite a concentrated and fast-paced way is going to be the way to go for me, because I feel like these are the kind of books where if I have too much of a break or read them too slowly, I am just going to kind of lose where I am and fall out of love with them a bit. But if I can read them in a concentrated way, then I will get more into the plot, I will get more into the characters, and I'm hoping that the writing will be beautiful and I will enjoy the story. So there we go. Those are my chunkers. Those are the big things that are going to take up a lot of my time over summer, but I'm really looking forward to all of them. Then we move on to the flip side, the lighter literature, the more beachy reads. I'm going to start off here with a bit of YA. I feel like YA perfectly fills this category of slightly more plot-based, lighter reading, something that you can really get into and whiz through quickly and just enjoy the experience of like maybe even reading a whole book in a day. What a luxury. The first thing that I have, and I might read this like, oh, look at that cover. I cannot get over these covers. Oh, did you ever see a more summery book than this glinting in the light? Okay, so the first thing that I would like to read is A Sky Painted Gold by Laura Wood. Laura Wood has swiftly become my favourite currently writing young adult author. She also wrote Under a Dancing Star, which I read last summer, and A Snowfall of Silver, which I read in the winter and was a perfect wintry book. This clearly from the cover looks like a perfect summer book. She writes historical fictional romances, often with quite a lot of literature and the arts kind of tied into her plots. And the other two books that I read by her were just such a delight. I loved every second of being with the book. You know that feeling when you're reading a book and like you can sense the warmth of the book kind of emanating out of the pages into you. They are proper ray of sunlight books. This book I realised from my read of A Snowfall of Silver, can't remember what it's called now, but yeah, from that I think this is actually kind of a vaguely tied in prequel to that. So this is about the older sister of the main character in the Skyfall of Silver book. This tells a story of, I believe, a young Cornish girl who gets swept into the lifestyle of a really rich and wealthy flapper-esque family in the late 1920s. It sounds like it's going to be full of glamour, summer romance, summer evenings, the sea, all of those lovely things that we want to be reading about during the summer holidays. The last little bit of the blurb says, as Lewis swept into their dazzling world of moonlit parties, unrivaled glamour, and whispered secrets, can she stay true to herself and her heart? My school is breaking up literally next week. Like by the time this video is out, I will be on my summer holidays, and this might be my first go-to read because I think it will really set me in that summery holiday mood. Next up, I have a bit of children's literature. This is The Girl Who Circumnavigated Fairyland in a Ship of Her Own Making. I was gifted this by a colleague at my last school, which now means I was probably given it about 3 years ago, and we both shared quite similar tastes in reading. And when I moved out to Congo, she gave me a little bundle of all of her own favourite books that she had like found secondhand copies of, and she's written me little notes in the front of each of them. And I've been gradually working my way through them while I've been living here, and I've loved every one so far, so I'm looking forward to this. I also had this recommended to me by a subscriber who said that she thought I would like it, so yeah, I'm excited for this. I've heard a lot of good things. It looks like it's the story of a 12-year-old girl who sets off in Fairyland and has to kind of save Fairyland from an overarching problem. My colleague wrote to me in the front, "This is an unexpected and crazy book, like a mixture between George MacDonald's fantasies and Lewis Carroll's Alice in Wonderland. It is rich and varied and perfect to read when none of your normal books can tempt you. I hope you find a boring rainy day to read this on and find it good company." The comparison to Alice in Wonderland makes me suspect that it's going to be a bit weird and wonderful, but beautiful, quirky, and interesting. So that's my other light, hopefully going to whiz through it kind of read. I'm trying to focus with my summer TBR on reading books which I actually have in the house on my shelf and have not read for a long time, because I do have a lot of unread books on my bookshelves, which does mean that my list of what I think of as really kind of classic beach read books, like those couple that I've got down there, like YA children's fiction, happy, light read kind of things, is not actually that long. And so I'm now moving on to just general like paperbacks that I have on my shelves. A lot of these I don't know that much about. And so yeah, the next few fictional books that I have are really just paperback books that look like they have a strong plot, probably also interesting characterization. Quite a few of them were shortlisted for like the Orange Prize or the Booker Prize or some kind of literary prize. So I think they will be books that feel really worthwhile reading, even though I'm going into them knowing very little about plot, characters, and author in a lot of situations. So here's a book I really do not know much about, but judging by the cover, is that a bad thing to do? I feel like it's going to be good. This is the winner of the Commonwealth Writers' Prize for Best Book, and it's a romance set in Sierra Leone. It sounds like it's a kind of dual narrative plotline, which is on the one hand telling the story of a forbidden love affair which occurred in the late 1960s, and then 30 years later we have a hospital during a civil war which is occurring, and we're looking at the staff in this hospital, the love affairs that they are having, the impact that these are having, and also the repercussions of the love affair which happened 30 years earlier. That's what I gather from the blurb. Sierra Leone is not a country whose history I know much about, so I'm looking forward to learning a bit more about that throughout this book, and also just sounds like it's probably going to be quite an emotional read. And I think, again, during summer when you have a bit more time, a bit more space, you can get more out of an emotional read and you can pour more of yourself into it because you're less distracted with other things going on. Then we have Americanah by Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie. I've read Half of a Yellow Sun by her before. I've also read her short essay, We Should All Be Feminists, and yeah, I think she's a great writer. I enjoyed Half of a Yellow Sun when I read it. It was a while back, maybe like 5 or 6 years ago that I read that, so I'm looking forward to reading another of her works. This is another romance. I love a romance, and especially during the summertime. It is initially set between two teenagers in Nigeria, and then it then comes back to both of these characters later on in their lives. One of them is part of the American diaspora, the other one part of the British diaspora, and I think they meet again later on, and it's about both their initial romance, telling us the story of that, and looking at their experiences later on in life. Something that I think Adichie explores quite a lot is the Nigerian diaspora. It sounds particularly interesting in this book because, according to the blurb, one of the characters emigrates successfully to America, whereas the other one ends up in Britain as an undocumented migrant, and so I presume their experiences of living in these Western countries are going to be vastly different due to their different migrant status. And the experience of being an undocumented migrant in the UK is something I should know so much more about as somebody from the UK. So yeah, this sounds fascinating. Again, a fairly hefty paperback. Like I mentioned before, this is perhaps more of a possibility pal than a TBR. I don't think I'm going to get through all of these, but I'm excited to try. Keeping up with the world literature theme, but moving out of Africa, I have The New Life by Orhan Pamuk, who is a Nobel Prize winning Turkish author. I heard Emmy Reads raving about his book Snow on her channel. I picked this up a while back and started reading it. Was not that into it, so I put it down, but I would like to go back and give it another try because I think Nobel Prize winning authors, it's worth like getting your whole way through one of their books. This is weird, but it's such an interesting concept. This is a book about a young man who is just going about his life, normal life, then he reads a book and it changes his life and he becomes obsessed with this book almost in a religious kind of way. It like gives him this new perspective on life, these new ideas, and this book leads him into an underworld, the dark sides of the human psyche. I don't really know, I couldn't really work out what was going on, but I do find this idea of like reading something and becoming fascinated by it and obsessed by it really interesting. And I'm not quite sure what the book's representing. Like, is it kind of like taking a drug and you have it once and it completely changes your life and you become addicted? Is it even paralleling just an exposure to new knowledge which completely changes somebody? You know, like people do sometimes have religious conversions overnight, or like converting to veganism overnight, or whatever it might be. I think there are times in our life where we can absorb some form of new knowledge and it can totally change us, and it can like send our life on a new path at any given moment, and I think that's a fascinating idea. So I am intrigued to see how it was explored in here, but yeah, when I was reading it, I just found it super weird and I couldn't get into it. I think I read maybe 50 pages or so. So I want to give it another go. I'm not too sure how I'm gonna find it, but it feels like it's worthwhile to properly read one of his books. Okay, then the last of my fairly long, comparatively contemporary written paperbacks. This is The Help by Catherynne Stockett. I have heard a lot of good things about this. It is described on the front as being the other side of Gone with the Wind, and it basically looks at the lives of the maids and the nannies in Mississippi in 1962, in this weird limbo of like being trusted to raise the children in the family but not being trusted to not steal from the families that they lived with, just like the immense racism that was a part of that community at that time, and the weirdness of this lifestyle. And then it sounds like it's about the friendship of 3 women, 2 black maids and 1 white woman, the way that the trust and bonds develop between them throughout the story, whatever the story is. The blurb doesn't really give that away, and I'm quite excited for that. I do really enjoy going into a novel not knowing much about it. I have one more book coming that I'm going to read this summer. A friend I have in Congo recently sent me a message saying she just read a book called South Riding by Winifred Holt. This was written in 1935. I've just exited my month of reading only books written between 1900 and 1950, and like I said, at the end of that challenge, it reminded me how much I love that time period for writing, so I'm excited to read another book that was written during that time period. She said it's the best thing that she has read in a while, and described it as quite similar to Lark Rise to Candleford, but more modern and set in Yorkshire, so that sounds amazing. The final group on my summer reading TBR, these are non-fiction books. A mixture of memoir, nature writing, journalism, and self-help, so let's get into it. We have A Time of Gifts by Patrick Leigh Fermor. Look at that beautiful cover. This is a classic travel writing memoir about a young man who walks across Europe from Rotterdam to Istanbul in the pre-war years, so I think like just before the Second World War. It's supposed to be beautifully written. One of my really good friends highly recommended this book. I'm hoping that it might be quite similar to Laurie Lee's writing, i.e. really lyrical, really beautiful. Apparently it's just filled with a real exuberance for learning, for new experiences, and for the beauty of the world, which sounds so up my street, so that's my first memoir. The other memoir book I would like to read, this little thing, is Carts and Candlesticks by Alison Uttley. Alison Uttley wrote The Country Child, which was my favourite book growing up, and The Country Child is a slightly fictionalised memoir of her childhood growing up on a Derbyshire farm in the early 1900s. This is a non-fictionalised memoir. We have warming pans and candlesticks, on receiving parcels, cricket, singing games, magic, carts, pony traps and horses, country fair. You get the picture of the kind of book this is. I love books like this. I love that English countryside, cottagecore, I guess, kind of writing, and I love Alison Uttley's writing. She's such a beautiful writer. She is really underrated. Her writing is descriptive, lyrical, beautiful, captures everything nostalgic and gorgeous about living in rural England in bygone days. Then we have Under the Stars by Matt Gore. This is a book that I got for Christmas, and I stumbled across it when I was looking for Under a Dancing Star by Laura Wood, which I talked about before. I just saw it and it sounded like something that I would absolutely love. This is a work of nature writing about the night sky, something which I find endlessly fascinating. I would love to get out into the country and stargaze more. I'd love to learn more about different constellations, that kind of thing. I just think the night sky fills you with such a sense of wonder and the magic of the world. Gazing at it is one of the most soul restorative things that I have ever experienced, and I know that this will inspire me to get out there to see it more, and I think also just the process of reading about it will fill me right up. Penultimate book on the summer reading wishlist is Radio Congo by Ben Rawlence. If you don't know, I currently live in DR Congo, which this book is written about, and so I'm always interested in finding out more about the country that I'm living in. What is particularly appealing about this book is that it is a good news Congo book. So if you've been following the news lately, you probably will have heard about the volcano erupting in Goma. If you read the news in general, you probably know that there's a civil war going on in DR Congo in the east. And whenever Congo comes up in the news, it's always for something super negative. Rawlence set out to journey through Eastern Congo and find the good and to record the good in a journalistic way, and I've just heard a lot of people saying that this is a really uplifting book, and it's so nice to hear the other side of Congo to the stuff that gets shared in the news all the time about all of the problems and hardships in this country. I've read a fair amount of nonfiction about Congo, about its history. Much of it has been very good, very informative, but also generally quite bleak and quite miserable, so it'll be lovely to read something positive about Congo. And the last book I would like to read this summer, this is a reread. It is The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen R. Covey. This is just my favourite self-help book that I've ever read. This will be, I think, maybe my 4th or 5th year of rereading it once a year. I find it so inspirational. I feel that it looks at life in such a deep and holistic and well-rounded way, and it always really inspires me to just be a better human. Something I've been reflecting on lately is how much self-help and also just general like Instagram captions and pretty much everything that you see and read now talks about like self-love and self-care, and everything is very much focused on us. And while this book does focus on you and on caring for you and on, you know, making commitments and keeping commitments to yourself, it also thinks about your role in the world in a wider sense, in the sense of giving and service and that kind of thing. And that's something that I find it very helpful to have a reminder of and have inspiration for. Otherwise you can just get a bit lost in being selfish. So yeah, Covey's book always re-inspires me to be living my life better than I am doing, and to strive to be a kinder, more decent, more all-round good human being. I'm really looking forward to my reread of this. It's been the highlight of my year the last few years. When I've reread it, I always feel so kind of motivated and positive while I'm with this text, and I really hope that it has the same effect this time around. I now have an enormous pile of books all about my feet. I'm very aware that this is a hyper-optimistic summer TBR, but I hope that you have maybe gathered some inspiration from the types of books, if not the specific books on this TBR, when you're thinking about what you would like to be reading in your summer reading. I am so excited and grateful that my summer holidays are coming soon. I am really, really ready for them. Very excited for all of the reading that I will be doing, and I will be sharing it in reading vlogs, wrap-ups, etc. Please do subscribe, hit the bell to get notifications of my videos if you haven't done so already, so that you can follow along with my reading journey if that interests you. I wish you all a wonderful bookish summer. Thank you for watching, and I look forward to seeing you again in my next video soon. Bye bye.